The Pilgrim Life is brought to you by the StarQuest Podcast Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate.
Welcome to Pilgrim Life Podcast, where we find the sacred in everyday life. I'm your hostess with the mostest. My name's Deborah, and joining me today is Sandy, my favorite Pilgrim Sandy.
Hi, everyone.
And we are going to do something we swore we weren't going to do very much when we restarted this podcast, which is we're going to talk about our favorite saint, because we just had his feast day and we were supposed to have this podcast done before his feast day, and that just, didn't happen. But we're going to talk about it anyway, because it is a very cool feast day, and it is July 25th. So if you're listening to this in January 25th, and it's 6 months from St. James's feast day, you can, if you're in the Midwest like I am and it's snow and like 20 degrees below zero, you can imagine it's July 25th and you're sweating, which is what I'm doing currently. So anyway, today we're going to talk about all the great things that go along with St. James.
And boy, do I have a few of those to tell you, including the Camino giving me my beloved Lolita, the most wonderful dog ever. Lolita was actually found by my son as he was doing the Camino. And at the time we were living in Logroño, and my son said, "Hey, Mom, guess what? We got us a dog." And Lolita has been with me since 2008. And she's one of the greatest gifts that the Camino has given me, not to mention, a lot of our friends and, pilgrims, people in albergues, that run albergues, priests, sisters. It's been great. And for those of you that are wondering about the magic of the Camino, let me tell you that we're giving you the heads up, because in 2021 is going to be the next Holy Year. And that happens when July the 25th falls on a Sunday.
I can't wait. Not that I don't know if I'll be there. What's so great about a whole year, though? Because I'm like, how's it different from a normal year?
Well, one of the things about the Holy Year at Jimmy's is that it falls every 6, 5, 6, and 11 years. And that's when July the 25th falls on a Sunday. I was very lucky to be there in 2010 when it was a Holy Year, and I have got to tell you, it was spectacular. It was amazing. It was incredible. It was magical. It was just magical. It was incredible.
Well, how's it different though? That's what I'm curious about. How's that different than every other time you've been to Santiago?
Well, you know what? On this particular year, there were a lot more pilgrims on the Camino, to begin with. There were a lot more people that, wanted to arrive, near the festivities, of St. James, of course. And, there were people that I had met, at albergues, people, priests, sisters, people that I have just met, on the Camino, throughout my years as a pilgrim. But this particular year was very special because I met a group of pilgrims, some of whom, came from New Mexico, and there were, a couple of others from California and back east, along with, a lot of other pilgrims, that had come in, from different regions in different countries up in Europe. And I do recall finding them at the plaza right in front of the cathedral. And we were just overjoyed, to have found each other. At that time, we just found a little spot, and we basically spread our things out. And we were just like laying down, watching the fireworks, coming over the cathedral. it was something that you would not believe. It was incredible. I mean, it was absolutely, it was magical. There were like all these people dancing, the bagpipes were playing, people were out dancing in the street. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Not to mention the fact that, Paulo Coelho, right?
Yes. He was the one that wrote the Pilgrimage and the Alchemist.
Right. So, it's he was there, and, I've known him, through like just kind of little interactions. And I saw him, and I said, Don Paulo, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, you must come to the party tonight. And he was throwing a big party at the Hostal de los Reyes Católicos, which used to be a pilgrim hostel at the time, that it was run, by the King and Queen of Spain. And now it's a very, very elegant hotel. And I said, I would love to. And I said, but I really can't. I said, I have Lolita with me. I said, my little Camino dog. And he goes, well, bring her in. And I'm like, you sure? Absolutely. So it was actually quite funny to see so many dignitaries and, very important people. And here's Lolita, whom I lovingly call Jojo, just, walking around in this beautiful courtyard, with like all these important people. And she's going out to everybody. Hi, I'm Lolita, the Camino dog. So it was a magical year. It was just amazing. It was amazing.
I hear now that if you do look at fireworks over the cathedral for normal feast days of St. James, they have they've added projections onto the cathedral now, like to kind of make it a little more magical. So that'll be interesting.
You know what? That I have not seen. That part, I mean, I've not been privy, to do that. I can just say, what my experience was. In 2010. And that particular weekend was also very special because there were a lot of music concerts going on. And among them, probably, two of my favorite, it was Diana Krall and Elvis Costello.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2010 was very, very special. Very, very, very special.
Well, and
it was amazing.
And we also have to give it the Catholic answer to what makes it a whole year and not just a normal year. So
yeah, and it's primarily because it just, like I said, is that when July the 25th falls on a Sunday, then it is declared a holy year, and the way that the calendar works is that July the 25th falls on a Sunday. First is like 6, 5, 6, and 11 years. So the last one was in 2010, and the next one is going to be in 2021. And then 6 years after that, so that would be in 2027. Right. That's when it's going to be the next whole year.
But what designates it between a normal year for indulgences? Because there's actually a stipulation for this. Is that, okay, so if you're Catholic and you walk the Camino during a normal, ordinary year, you get a partial indulgence when you get to the end. Meaning, if you go to confession, receive the Eucharist, pray for the Pope's intentions, pray for, St. James's intentions, and, and whatever prayers, you get a partial remission of your sins, according to the Catholic Church. On a holy year, you get the whole shebang. You get total forgiveness.
Up until that point in your life.
Yeah, so it's I don't want to say it's partial, it's plenary. Plenary. Is that the right term for that?
Plenary, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And indulgence. So you get and I always kind of felt it was unfair because I've never walked in a whole year, and I actually don't want to walk in a whole year because of the crowds. Like, the Camino's crowded enough. Why would I want to walk when there's like double the amount of people? But boy, I kind of, that little loophole, that little Catholic loophole kind of, I have a beef to say with St. James on that one.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like, you don't even, it's like, I mean, you don't have to walk the Camino in order for that to happen.
Right.
Because the thing is that, when it's a holy year, or at least the way that that I understand it, is that you can go during that time, and you have to obviously, visit the tomb of the apostle, and you have to do your little prayers and, pray for the, the intentions, of the Pope, and, go to confession, take the Eucharist, as well, but it's just like, you don't have to, you don't have to be walking the Camino during that one particular time, so because there's a lot of people, for example, that may suffer from, chronic issues, arthritis or cancer, a number of different things, and it's just kind of like saying, for example, well, you know what, it's like, you'll get a plenary indulgence when you go to Lourdes, on a particular apparition day. I mean, you go to Lourdes whenever you can. And when you go with an unbelievable amount of faith, and I often say that people that go to Lourdes, the people that have their illnesses on their body are far better off than many of us, who look, apparently good on the outside, but the wounds are on the inside, because you see like that light in their eye. So, for those people that cannot make it to Santiago, necessarily, to be there like on the weekend, of like the holy year, you know what? It's like, just go.
Yeah, that's true.
Just go and, spend time, in the church. After the Pilgrim Mass, and the spectacle of the incense burn of the Botifarmeiro, a lot of people leave and the church is quite empty. Go and explore the little chapels all around. Go and sit outside. I was actually privy, when there was a mass like down below the altar. Probably, one of the most memorable days of my life. It was just unbelievable. And it's beautiful. It's soothing. It's just beautiful. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. So don't think, that being out in the crowds is necessarily going to win you, the indulgence or forgiveness. I mean, our Lord, forgives us even before we ask Him.
Right.
Just spend time with Him, and with all of the, with all of His homies, as I like to call them.
Homies. I was going to say along the same. So in a future podcast, Sandy and I are going to talk about. So my parents grew up. My dad grew up in this church in Nebraska, and it has a Marian shrine attached to it now. And it's Our Lady of Fatima. So 2017 till this year, you could get a plenary indulgence if you did all that everything that goes along with it. And a couple of years ago, they also did, like 2012, another year of indulgences. Like you could get a plenary indulgence if you visit the shrine. And at the time I was working at the shrine. I was like doing gardening. And so I'm like, I'm starting to collect these plenary indulgences, because all you have to do is go to confession, receive communion, and, and pray, and do the prayers. And so it was like, well, you could technically get a plenary indulgence every single week that you go to mass at this church. And so
Right.
you can give those away too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can give away your plenary indulgences for somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is cool.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's kind of a neat thing, but I was like, oh, I wonder how that, who that affects. I always try to think about who would need a plenary indulgence most in the people who are surrounding me. So it's always kind of a fun little secret gift you can give.
Right. Well, I have to say, that like being on pilgrimage, in the many times that we've been on pilgrimage, either on our own or together, I actually feel guilty, believe it or not.
For what? What do you feel guilty for?
Because I'm so ridiculously happy and joyful, and they're like all of these like incredible blessings that I just kind of start like passing them on to different people. People that just, like come into my mind. And I know that back in 2010, there were a couple of people that I was actually, praying for. And I was just like so happy to, be there on a Jubilee year, that even in the midst of, all the music and the fireworks and the church and the mass and how unbelievable it was. I kept finding myself thinking about these other people and just going, you know what, Jimmy? It's like, I've been really lucky. Can I pass it on? Now, that was just kind of like my way of just saying, you know what? Call them to the Camino. Call them to the path. Call them to the trail, that leads to where you can experience this kind of like love and, this kind of joy. The Camino has brought me nothing but love and joy and happiness. And both my children, my dog, friends. It's just Jimmy's been very good to me, but not nearly as good as he has been to you. I mean, Jimmy definitely plays favorites, and you're his fave.
I can't say that I'm his fave, but the funny thing is that I've told a lot of people, I'm hanging out in the fishing boat with Jimmy. I hang out and cast my nets into the waters and see who I can catch for him and who I can catch for the Lord and send them on the path. And then it's not, I might put them in the boat, but it's not up for me to I don't know, finish that metaphor. It's not up to me to fry them in the pan, which sounds terrible. Catch them.
Talking about fish.
Anyway,
but you know what? It's kind of interesting, because not until some years back that I realized how much Jimmy has permeated so much of our lives. Obviously, because of Santiago, it's James, and we would call him Jimmy, but it's also Tiago, which many people in Brazil, many men in Brazil are called Tiago. And there's they also, call him, what is it? Santiago, Tiago, Jaime, Jimmy, Jacob. I mean, Jacopo in Italy. I mean, it really is true that what the Blessed Mother said in Zaragoza, that he was going to be converting far more people.
He's converting so many. So, I mean, if you're ever interested in seeing how many people are walking the Camino, they keep tabs on that. So you can go to the cathedral. And also, I think there's another site that keeps tabs on it, like Camino Ways or something like that. But they will tell you, for somebody who's into data, it's a lovely data mine of how many people from what country, what religion, or, well, not religion specifically, but more like religion or not religion, plus gender. And I think they might even age. Yeah. So it's interest and where they started from. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to look at that kind of data. And as a social scientist, I actually was thinking about doing some work as far as taking some of that data and trying to ask, there's a lot of work going on right now in the Camino as far as figuring out what pilgrimage means and what is happening with the way religion is in the world right now. Why is pilgrimage increasing? And all of these pilgrimage sites are just popping up, and they're hungry for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, but the thing about pilgrimage, is that pilgrimage really is a spiritual practice. Because it's nourishing the spirit is not just like, kneeling and, like reading a book or just, sitting, necessarily in a church, it's really finding God in everything. And I do recall one particular time, when I had gone to Utah, and I went to Bryce Canyon, and I was, just kind of hiking around, and I was just in awe. I mean, literally, I was in awe of the beauty of this place, and I'm just thanking God, for this, like, for his creation. It's just like how incredibly beautiful it was. Now, as beautiful as it was seeing it, from like the top, it wasn't nearly as beautiful as walking down and then looking up, and that's what, that really is what pilgrimage is all about. It's just, putting one foot in front of the other and just allowing yourself to be guided and taken, and finding rhythm between your heart, your mind, your soul, so it's, I mean, from my end, I really, believe, I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that when we walk, we're able to see the world with like new eyes, and we're able to experience things that, we had not experienced before. Both you and I have these like amazing stories on the Camino that, we can just talk about day in and day out.
Yeah. Well, I totally hear what you're saying. It's, we've walked the Camino so many times. It's different every time, by the way. If you walk it once, the second time you walk it will be different. The third time, I can attest, the third time was way different for me. But, and the fourth time I walk it in about 10 months, I just realized the other day, I'm getting ready for 2 more Caminos in May and June. And I'm just like, wow, that's just 10 months away. I got to go back.
And yeah, but just think about it, like all of the routes, they used to say all roads lead to Rome, when it was like all about the Romans. But the reality is that throughout Europe now, all roads lead to Santiago. Mm-hmm. And if they don't go to Santiago, then they go, and they go and check out their pal Peter. They lead to Rome. And I just think it's like completely fascinating. It's like all of these roads, and you're going, I mean, Teresa of Avila. Yeah. You don't have to stay very far away from the Camino, to go and see Teresa of Avila. And I know she's one of your faves.
Oh, I went to see her last time. I did.
I know.
I wish I had more time to spend with her.
Yeah. And, and then, for example, like, up north, like in France, you don't have to, steer very, very far to go and see Teresa of Lisieux.
Or the castle for Saint Francis Xavier. Is that who I'm thinking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or is it Ignatius of Loyola?
Oh, my God. One of my favorite places in the world. Oh, I tell you what, doing the spiritual exercises, at St. Ignatius of Loyola's, home, his home and his birthplace was like unbelievable. I mean, my God, we really are blessed, aren't we, Deb?
Yeah, we're a little privileged. And it was St. Iggy's feast day recently, too.
Yeah,
like,
July the 31st.
Yep. So two important feast days in 1 week. And you can also do those pilgrimages. And they do an Iggy pilgrimage, don't they? A walking one on his feast day.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? For a lot of the people that are traveling up to France, for example, you know, a lot of people love going up to Paris. They can take actually the train from Paris to Biarritz, and they can rent a car, or they can just, you know, and drive up to Aspetia, or otherwise they can take the train all the way up to Endaya and then just, you know, take a taxi into San Sebastian or San Sebastian, which is probably one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I'm not exaggerating. And then from there, you know, you can just, you know, drive over to Aspetia, and you can visit, you know, the house, you know, where Saint Iggy was, you know, was born, the room where, you know, Jesus appeared to him, his conversion. It's, you know, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty amazing. You know, and in terms of the Camino, if I just have a little additional anecdote that I can say, the Camino gave me the friendship of a wonderful, wonderful woman, a wonderful Catholic that has been nothing but a blessing in my life. My dear friend, Deb.
Oh, yes, because, you know, she went up and down the Camino looking for me, my first Camino.
I did.
I was already home in my jammies. I was already in my jammies with my bruised feet. But we have yet to walk the Camino together. We should probably plan that at some point. But we have walked one we'll talk about that pilgrimage later.
Absolutely.
Because that was amazing. There was one more feast day that I actually hit in Madrid that I was kind of upset that I didn't get to go see his remains, which is, and I will say it, not the way they say it in Madrid, but for us Americans, it was Saint Isidore, the farmer. But I don't, so, and his feast, his feast day was May 15th, and I was in Madrid for it. I was like, oh, it was lovely. It was a great fiesta.
Well, you know, that's one of the things, though, about patron saints up in Spain. It doesn't really matter what town you go to or what city. Everyone has a particular patron saint, you know, that they go out and and they celebrate, you know, and it's in Logroño, for example, you know, where I lived. It was San Bernabé.
Saint what? Who?
Bernabé.
Okay.
Barnabas.
Oh, Barnabas. Okay, sorry. American.
And it's absolutely joyful and wonderful and unbelievable amount of fun. And, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, we can post some of the pictures from the different pilgrimages that, that we've undertaken, both by ourselves or, you know, with each other, so that, you know, some of our listeners can actually listen and, you know, to the podcast and just kind of like relate to some of these places that we've been to.
Yeah, there was, I'm going to switch gears just for a second, because I was thinking about our last podcast where we were talking about whether or not you would walk the Camino solo or as a group. And I don't think I put enough emphasis that you might want to choose a tour company if you have some sort of medical illness or that you feel like you don't want, for safety reasons, don't want to be alone. Even though I think the Camino is very, very safe. But I was just thinking about that because I'm planning another group pilgrimage. And I'm going to shout out to my vendor right now. because there's a lot of vendors cropping up along the Camino that are doing tours. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm using Yutrea and Isusa, which
Susea.
is Sosia. Yeah, sorry. Rui and Yolanda, and they are fantastic. And they actually they do a lot of American patronage right now, both bicycle and walking, both Frances, if they have to, that's not their favorite. They like the Portuguese, and they just did the Norte, and they Yolanda and Rui met on the Camino and married. So it's a nice little Camino love story. They met on the English route, which I haven't walked, but apparently that's their favorite route. So there's tons of different places, and there's a couple different ones that I want to walk soon. Like I'd love to do the one from Valencia.
Oh, the one from Alicante going all the way up to Via de la Plata.
Oh, yes. I'd love to.
I mean, there's so many different routes. I will have to say, that El Camino Frances is always going to have a very special place in my heart. When I first did it like 17 years ago, it wasn't nearly as busy or nearly as kind of commercial,
right.
As it's become in some places. The Camino Frances, like I said, it's always going to have a place in my heart. But as I've, I guess, as I've gotten older, I do not want to place myself in any kind of danger. Not that Spain is dangerous, because it's not,
right.
But I want to place myself on routes, the road less traveled, let's put it that way, or the Camino less traveled.
I think that's the general consensus anymore, actually.
I need that, I need infrastructure in terms of like albergues, places that I can stop for a cup of coffee, whatever. But I need that solitude. I need that time. I need, to know that, at the end of the day, I will go out and I will get to see my friends, my fellow pilgrim brothers and sisters. But I do need that solitude, and I cherish that. That's my time with God. And that is God's time to speak to me. And I don't know that at this point in my life, I'm actually willing to relinquish it.
Well, and that's funny, because I don't know how much I talked about it in the prior podcasts, about, I get privy. I have all these P words. I have all of this information from my students that I took, and about what they got out of the Camino. And a lot of them were like, wow, the commercialization of the Camino really bothered them. And they would have liked a little more privacy on the Camino and less traffic towards the end. You get to Sarria and it's like, and, charge, everybody's like, there. And so I think this next time when we do the Portuguese, I think it's going to be quieter, and I think the students, even though they haven't been on the Frances, will appreciate the quiet and solitude compared to the Frances. We'll see. Yeah,
and you know what? And for the people that want to go on pilgrimage, if you have that call in your heart, to go on pilgrimage, to experience pilgrimage, the spirit of pilgrimage, don't let anything stop you. Just go. You can make arrangements, to have to walk and then have somebody pick you up, like, for example, like at the end of a stage, or help. My mom, that's almost 80 years old, she wanted to go out into the Camino, and for her, at 80 years of age, and she had a number of, health issues. My mom, I took her in the car, and we stopped at every single place where there was like a church, and she stopped and she said a prayer, and she had a café con leche, And then we moved on and we took a lot of the rural roads, just like out on the Camino. We did pretty much everything. Now, can you discount my mom for doing it by car versus myself who did it walking, many years prior?
Yeah.
It's I think probably a decade ago or so, I probably would have discounted it because I was quite a purist and rather arrogant about it. But as I have gotten older, I have come to appreciate the effort that older people take in order to do and follow that call in their heart. And so if you tell me, if I see a 20-year-old kid speeding, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, to get to the next place, and do the Camino in like 3 or 4 days, getting as many stamps, as a way of saying, look, I went ahead and I did it in 1 week, I might take a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
But I can tell you one thing, I was quite humbled when I found myself walking in the shoes of pilgrims that I criticized before.
We had,
and
since,
I will not do that.
So one of the things we had, since it was a sociology class that I was teaching, and we stuck to a lot of sociology topics, obviously. And in this day and age, we took quite a diverse group of pilgrims with us. And so there were a lot of very different types of people with us. And so we had to have a discussion about what a microaggression is. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, it means, sometimes, it's like cutting somebody down without being aware that you're doing it, or cutting them down but it seems like a nice thing, like telling, I think I'll do one that's personal to me, which is, I'm a larger girl, and a lot of times, and I can outwalk a lot of people, which is very surprising to people. And so they'll be like, wow, you walk really well. And I'm like, yeah, that's a microaggression. So we had to talk about that. And the day after we talked about that, what a microaggression is, we were walking along the Camino, and there's one of the markers, and it was closer to the 100-kilometer marker. And we walked past, and somebody had written on there, Jesus didn't start in Saria. So it was just like a big old microaggression. And I like, did you see the microaggression written about the pilgrims who start, 100 kilometers away from Santiago, as opposed to people who start in Leon or start in Saint Jean, and the students picked up on that right away. Oh yeah, it's a terrible microaggression. And it goes back to, I think that, the story of, the widow, the widow who puts, her, a couple coins into the collection at the temple, and and why is she celebrated more than somebody who can afford to give money? And Jesus is like, because she gave all she could, and you could all she had, and you could say that's for your mom, who's for a lot of pilgrims, maybe all they have is they can only walk, a couple kilometers one day, or, it takes all they have to do it, but they're going to do it with all their heart and with all their, with everything they have, where as, for some of us, and I'm not one of these people, they can walk, 25 kilometers and, before breakfast, and and good for them, but it means just as much for the person who can only walk 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm. And you've met my mom, and
Yes.
you know, it's like it's very difficult for her to walk, you know. So I mean, just the fact that she got out of the car, you know, and walked to the church and said her prayers, and you know, we were stopping at albergues, you know, with like friends and people that like we knew, and you know, she was so grateful and just like, thank you for taking care of my daughter, you know, during her previous caminos, and the friendship and the love, you know, that like you've given her. You know, so having said that, the Camino is not just, you know, like seriousness, and it's also not just fun. The Camino is full of lessons, and it doesn't matter whether, you know, your Camino is in Spain or Canada or in Nebraska or, you know, up in the Basque Country or in France. You know, it's every pilgrimage, every path that we take, and even when we're walking our dogs, has meaning.
Yes.
That's all about finding the sacred in everyday life, isn't it?
It is. Nice tie-in to our slogan there. That's awesome. But on that note, I think we are going to stop here, and we are going to pick up on our next episode. I think we're going to talk about something a little closer to our hearts here. So stay tuned for our next episode, because we're going to talk about a famous U.S. pilgrimage. I can't wait to talk about it because I went on it this year. I'm so excited. Anyway, so from Sandy and I, we are both going to wish you a buen camino, and we'll see you later.
And don't forget to find the sacred in everyday life.